Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you'll meet the woman behind a global ministry. Sharon Bolan is next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
So my father, brother, uncle, all ministers, and of course I go into TV news. But I do feel like I've got a ministry going on right now through the airwaves and through my viewers, and I'm always looking for fascinating people to profile, and Sharon Bolan is in studio. She is with Sharon Bolan Ministries. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hello, Jeff. Great to be with you today.
Now you have a global ministry, but this is not something that you were born thinking about. You actually had a transformation.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
Well, it started with my father, who at 11 years old was raised in a Hindu family, and he was contemplating reincarnation and just having a lot of fear about life after death. And one day he came home from school, and there was a little gospel tract that was slid under the door, and he read for the first time about Jesus and heaven, and he'd never heard the name Jesus before. And so he ended up slipping out of the Hindu temple and going to a Protestant church one evening, and he heard the gospel. He didn't talk to anybody. He came back and he got on his knees in his bedroom and he said, Jesus, if you're the real God, just show me, because he had so much fear and anxiety. And he said it was at that moment that this amazing peace just came upon him. And he knew in an instant, think about it, no Billy Graham or anybody around. It's just he and God. And he knew in that instant that Jesus was God and heaven was real. And so he had a massive conversion at the age of 11. And that is really, and he's the only son of 6, so he was really persecuted from my grandparents. But he continued in the faith and ended up being the first tenor. He was a phenomenal soloist, so he was the first tenor to sing in the United States from Guyana. And then a church here sponsored us. He started teaching the word. He's an amazing Bible scholar. And so we were able to come to America legally, went through that system and just fell in love with our country. And my dad just raised me to love God and love country because of the little tract that was responsible for his conversion from the United States of America. So he really loved this nation and really had a desire to feed America the Word of God and bless America with his singing. So that was my early upbringing.
But you didn't immediately go into the ministry. You had a career in modeling.
I did.
So tell us about that.
I did. So in my high school years, I was discovered by an agency and started in the modeling world. And that's a whole different world than the ministry world, as I was raised in. But really looking for my identity, searching, thinking if I made it, on the front cover of Vogue magazine and everybody knew my name, that would fulfill me, not knowing that I was so empty inside. And at the height of that career, I was living in Palm Beach, about to take a job to go overseas. And I said, God, I don't know you anymore. I am so far away. And I just said a little prayer. I'd like to know you again. And then everything went wrong in my life. What is happening to me? I'm trying to get right with God and everything goes south. And a very long story short, I began to get very ill. And I came back to Dallas and thought I was just going to get a checkup and I'd be okay. But I ended up staying for 2 years, dying of an illness that the doctors could not diagnose, and laid in a sick bed for 2 years in my parents' home. And at first I was very angry with God because the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I took my Bible and I just kind of shook my fist at God. I said, if you're real and this is real, then let's see if it really works. And I began to memorize scriptures that dealt with healing. And I began to, in the Bible, see myself and begin to find who God really was, not just because I could ride on the coattails of my dad, because the walk, you have to find it on your own. It's a one-on-one individual walk. And it was through sickness that he revealed himself to me, and what I was searching for really was the love that only he could give me, that I was looking for in a career or a boyfriend or whatever, material possessions. And at the climax of that 2 years, I was healed miraculously. I had a near-death experience where I literally came out of my body, which I used to make fun of people that had that, but God began to speak to me, and I had this miraculous encounter, and he healed me. And after he healed me, my whole entire course changed of my life. And I found really what I was searching for. And then he began to give me dreams about being a preacher. And I thought, oh, I'll do anything, but I don't want to preach the gospel. Please don't let me be a preacher. I'll do anything. Thank you for saving my life, but not preach. But I finally, surrendered to that calling, and it's been there ever since.
Now, when you resisted it, was it because you didn't, are you shy naturally? I mean, being a model and being on camera is not foreign to you, but preaching the word in front of thousands of people, I mean, that's intimidating for just about everybody.
Yeah, I wasn't shy. I was intimidated because I did not go to seminary, and I didn't feel adequate. I felt very inadequate in my ability to preach, because my father was a scholar and I didn't know the Bible like my dad knew. And I didn't just jump out and preach overnight. It took years. I studied, and I was mentored and before I stepped out. But when I did step out, it was such a big leap of faith. In fact, I rented the old Texas Rangers ballpark field. Sure. And I had no idea if anybody would hear this unknown person come and preach. Nobody knew who Sharon Bolan was. But I had big faith, and I stepped out in the heat of Dallas. You know what August is like in Dallas-Fort Worth, 110 degrees. And I said, Lord, I'm stepping out by faith. You told me to do it. I'm going to do it. I rented a big tent, took a loan out to rent the tent, didn't even have the money. And I started marketing myself, and I would go to bookstores and I'd say, hey, you should come hear this first-time preacher named Sharon Bolan. Yeah, I mean, she's got a great word, and I didn't tell people it was myself. And I was just going to nightclubs, because I used to live there, and I would put, flyers on these nightclub, the patrons and all the cars, and come find what you're looking for at the DFW 10 event. I didn't tell them it was a crusade. I made it sound like a singles, happening, but
you're a heck of a marketer.
I had to do it myself. I had no one. But the Lord just opened the doors, and we had about 500 people that showed up. All the news media showed up. Your network showed up. And the winds came. I prayed because it was 110. And just those 2 nights, the temperature was in the low 80s with 20-mile-an-hour winds, not even a mosquito in sight. And it was awesome. And a lot of people got saved. And that's really how the ministry began. It was launched on the old ballpark field of the Texas Rangers.
Field of Dreams. You told us a story right before we went on about a young person that watched you and had a transformation. Tell that story.
Yes. I've had many young people, and I love this upcoming generation. I feel like we need to impart into them, because there's such an identity crisis. And I had an identity crisis myself. But this individual was really discouraged on their school campus and didn't know how to witness to people, how to even talk to them, and contacted our ministry, and I began to really mentor them and help them and encourage them and teach them some things. And they were so touched that they literally changed the campus. They began to be a voice. People would come to them for prayer requests, and they began to really have a voice on that campus, and they began to see the lives change and people really coming into something with God. Because you can even be on a Christian campus and that doesn't mean you're a Christian. But he was really instrumentally used with a voice that he didn't think he had. So you never know if it's just one life. I mean, what's the value of a soul? If you can minister to someone and give them hope, and they can go out and touch others, that's what I believe it's all about.
Absolutely. And the pandemic interrupted so many lives, and so many churches had to go virtual. Now that they're coming back physically, they're all suffering from the same problem. That people aren't coming back in the numbers that they had pre-pandemic. What do you think the secret is to reaching, especially young people?
I believe social media is so impactful if we can use it in the right way. You know, Jeff, I couldn't travel anymore after the pandemic, as most everyone. And what I did is I took my tripod and I went to Globe Life Field parking lot because the Rangers couldn't even play in 2020 in that first opening season. And I just set up my tripod and I began to preach from the parking lot of the stadium.
Wow.
And that ended up going viral and going all over the world because I was doing that every week. That was my platform.
Yes.
And so I just did something out of the ordinary. Instead of sitting in a house or a church building, I just went out to a parking lot. But I think that we reach people in different ways, but this young generation, if we can be a voice in social media, whatever that platform is, and give them positive messages of hope and healing and identity, I think we're going to see a big change.
And I think faith is so important now because so many people were just shocked by the pandemic. I mean, businesses closed, loss of loved ones. I mean, if there's any time in our adult lives when you need to find faith, it's now, right?
Absolutely. Yes, and more than ever, we had a captive audience because no one could really go anywhere. So everyone was going to social media. So I think it was, as bad as it has been, it was really a positive, because what I've found in our ministry is so many people who came and said, you know, I haven't been walking right with God. I've been too busy. And now I realize I need to get some things right. So as bad as it was, God always turns a bad situation around for good. There's always a positive we can find in it.
Outstanding. We've only got a couple of minutes left. So where do you see this all going?
Wow.
How big do you want it to go?
Wow, can we ask God that question? I'd love to have that answer today. I think the walk for me is daily. It's a daily journey. Though I would love to win the world, I think we all have our role to play. And whether that's a small amount of people or a large, it makes no difference to me. I believe that every soul is equally important. And if you can just impact one life, that life can impact other lives. And it just continues to multiply. And that's how Jesus started with those 12 disciples. And look how they turned the world upside down. So I'm just excited to be where I'm at right now. And wherever the road leads me, whatever God has for me, I'm willing to go.
That's outstanding. We're going to put your website up, and I want you to talk to the viewer about how they can get involved.
Yes, just go to our website at SharonBolan.com. It's very easy, and I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email or private message me on Facebook at Sharon Bolan. I do respond as much as I can, or my assistant will respond to you. And I also do a lot of series teaching messages where I help you grow in your walk with God and get stronger and know how to handle the problems that we're facing in everyday life. That's a big part of what I do. Is I want people to experience God's healing power because I was healed. And also I want them to experience a change in their own life where they can walk in a deeper dimension of intimacy with God.
Amen. Sharon Bolan, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
You bet. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.